And now, join Pokemon trainer Jed for a non-stop, action-packed, laugh-filled, perilous journey. Turn your hat around, grab your Pokeballs, and get ready for the fantastic Pika Pals Podcast, where the excitement never ends.
Welcome to the Pika Pals Podcast. I'm your host, Pokemon trainer Jed, and I thank you for tuning in. Today we're diving into episode 16, Pokemon Shipwreck. A Titanic-level disaster, unlikely alliances, and the most dramatic Magikarp moment of all time. Let's get to it! Originally aired on July the 15th, 1997 in Japan, and then on October the 1st, 1998 in the US, this was the 16th episode of the original Pokemon anime series, and it was called Pokemon Shipwreck. The Japanese title for this was Pokemon Adrift. A direct continuation from last week's cruise catastrophe, with Ash, Misty, Brock, and Team Rocket all trapped underwater in the sunken St. Anne. I guess you could say they're under the sea, Pikachu. Let's start off with an episode deep dive. This one is particularly deep because we're going deep under the sea. Here's some cool trivia from this episode that I found. The narrator references the Titanic, a luxury liner that sank in the Atlantic Ocean in 1912. The plot of this episode is very similar to the 1972 disaster film, The Poseidon Adventure. The ship on which the memorial service was held is named PM-16. The initials appear to stand for Pocket Monsters, and that's the Japanese name of Pokemon, and the number corresponds with the episode number. A similar style Easter egg appears in another episode called Misty Meets Her Match. This was the first episode to be dubbed into English following the North American release of Pokemon Red and Blue, so Pokemon fever was just about to pick up around this time. Now in this episode, we see real fish once again, and that raises the question of if there are actually real animals, aside from Pokemon, in the Pokemon universe. This is always something that has kind of made me think, well, Goldeen is a fish, but she is a Pokemon. But in this episode, we see fish in a fish tank. Are they just fish that swim in the sea? Are they fish that you could eat if you went to, fish and chip shop? Could you eat a Goldeen? What do you think? Are there real animals as well as Pokemon in the Pokemon universe? I think there are a few occasions where we do see real animals. Most of the time it is fish, from what I remember. But yeah, really interesting thing to consider. This is the first time that Ash and his friends and Team Rocket have to work together, but they do make a good team, if I do say so myself. And in the engine room scene, James refers to Jessie as Jessica, using her full name in a moment of crisis. Brock makes a reference to Noah and his Ark, which is the first reference to a real-world religion in the animated series. And although Misty never returns her Pokemon to their Pokeballs when the Gyarados attacks their raft, her Pokemon were not lost. This episode is partially adapted into one of the Pokemon books called Island of the Giant Pokemon. Now, it's unknown how the police knew that Jessie and James went down with the ship, and even more so that they knew them by name, because Team Rocket was technically not even supposed to be on board the St. Anne, and their presence wasn't actually known until shortly before the ship sank. The same happens with Ash, Brock and Misty, as there's no roll call as to see who was on the ship and who needed to be saved. However, I guess maybe a roll call was done off screen. The captain of the ship does seem a bit lax with his rules and regulations, so we'll just say he did it. Now, this episode was the first episode to hint at Misty having a fear of Gyarados, and I'm with you there, Misty. I think Gyarados is the most terrifying Pokemon. He has the scariest face, he's always angry, he can never close his mouth, he's absolutely huge. I agree with Misty that Gyarados is terrifying. We would see this again in another episode called Cerulean Blues, and she strategizes running away from Gyarados, whereas in the Japanese version, she's actually shocked that Magikarp evolves into Gyarados at all. Now, Goldeen says Goldeen after being sent out in the English version, and this is the same line heard in the Super Smash Bros. Game, specifically the English and German versions. Now, for all you Poke perfectionists, myself included, I did spot some goofs and animation slip-ups when re-watching this episode, and I'll be interested to see if you spot them too, if you choose to watch it back. There was a few colour errors. Misty's bag is the wrong colour at one point, or maybe she had it inside out, could be reversible. Meowth's ear and tail is coloured wrong, and the tip of Ash's hat is incorrect at multiple parts in the episode. Ash's magical colour-changing hat cropping up once again. There's actually a dubbing error as well, as Meowth and Misty's Japanese voices can still be heard during the scene where they shake hands. And Team Rocket's Japanese version of Blast Off is also heard. Listen carefully if you go back to watch it and you can hear the original Japanese audio left in. Speaking of dub edits, of course, let's take a look at any dub edits and changes from the Japanese version. I always like to go back and look at the original Japanese broadcast and see what was changed when it got dubbed and sent across the world into other countries. Now, the Titanic is only referenced in the dub version. The scene where Misty instructs them to retrieve their Pokémon actually differs slightly from the two versions. In the original Japanese version, Misty threatens Team Rocket, stating if they don't return their Pokémon, she'll throw them into the water. But in the dubbed version, she says, "What's more important, a Pokémon battle or your life?" The Japanese Misty was not messing around. She was about to throw Team Rocket into the sea. Now, the part where Jessie and James mention being good dressers was actually them saying they'll never forget each other in the original version, which is a lot more emotional. I'm not sure why that was changed in the dub, but they are good dressers nonetheless. In the Japanese version, when they're trying to escape the sunken ship, Jessie also tells James that if he doesn't come with them, he'll die down there. Now, in the Latin American dub, Jessie states that she'll always remember James for being a wonderful brother. But this is actually false, as Jessie and James are not siblings. It's likely just a dub mistake specific to the Latin American version. Who knew people in Latin America might have grown up all these years thinking Jessie and James were siblings? And when Ash and his friends express their condolences as they prepare to bury the seemingly drowned Team Rocket, they also mention that they regret the way that Team Rocket died in the original Japanese version. Now, in the Italian version of this episode, when Ash calls his Squirtle for help, his usual Squirtle cry is replaced with a high-pitched voice saying, "Squirtle's ready." But just imagine that in Italian. So maybe he'd be like, "It's me, Squirtle, Squirt. Squirtle is ready for you, Ash. I am ready." Shout out to anyone listening in Italy. Sorry about that. I'm pretty sure that's how a Italian Squirtle would sound. Anyway, I'm going to be back and I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on this episode. Stay where you are, Pika Pals.
Goldeen? What's taking Goldeen so long? I guess it can't find a way out. Team Rocket?
They look terrible.
Prepare for trouble.
Yes, make it double.
You just heard a clip there from the episode when Goldeen saved Team Rocket. But what actually went down in this episode? Well, luckily we got to see everyone escape the sunken St. Anne, otherwise the Pokemon anime series could have ended here. But even though they made it out of the shipwreck, land is nowhere in sight. It was interesting to see Jessie and James actually cooperate with Ash and the gang. We got to see James's Magikarp that he bought from the Magikarp salesman evolve into a Gyarados, but then he gets abandoned, which if only James had held on to Magikarp just a little bit longer and not mistreated him, not kicked him into the sea, James could have had a Gyarados. And we got to see Gyarados actually use Dragon Rage, one of the most popular and well-known Pokemon moves which summons a huge water vortex, and that's what actually separated the entire gang of characters. Now, as for the pacing and tension of this episode and how it fits into the overall Pokemon series, it's a perfect continuation of the previous episode, Battle Aboard the St. Anne, which left us on a real to-be-continued moment. Literally, all we saw was the ship at the bottom of the sea. It had suspense, survival, shifting dynamics, unlikely teams. It was packed with real emotion, I thought. It was a chaotic, underwater, problem-solving episode. It was like Titanic condensed into a 20-minute Pokemon episode. It was the same level of drama and the same level of tension that you would get from watching Titanic. In fact, I would say it was probably the same level of drama and tension that the people on the Titanic felt watching this particular episode. And what did we learn about Ash, Pikachu and his friends? Well, we got to see Misty step up, perhaps being the most resourceful character, revealing the blueprints and leading to their escape plan. And a big shout out to Onyx for his incredible part in helping the gang escape. And for Team Rocket, we actually got to see Jessie show some true loyalty towards James when James was panicking trying to climb up the vines during their escape. One of the things I like to do with Pokemon as I've been watching it back is kind of look at the deeper meanings and lessons, see if there's any moral takeaways. And for this episode, I guess you could take away the importance of cooperation and teamwork under pressure. We got to see survival instincts kick in, and perhaps most importantly, never underestimate Magikarp. And for that matter, never underestimate anyone based on thinking that they may be weak or useless. Who would have thought that Magikarp would become the all-powerful Gyarados? And another scene from this episode that was just a highlight for me was when Brock, Ash and Misty assume that Team Rocket are dead, so they think, well, we'll give them a burial at sea.
They weren't able to make it. Not even Team Rocket deserved this.
Yeah. I guess the only decent thing to do is to give them a traditional burial at sea.
That's right. It's our duty, even if they were our enemies.
Zombies! Who are you calling zombies?
We are not zombies.
Somebody help! My fur's getting wet!
Imagine a zombie Team Rocket. That would be pretty cool, actually. A zombie version of Jesse, James and Meowth. Well, that's what I thought of this episode. I enjoyed this one. It's a memorable episode for me. I do think that this episode used to be shown quite a lot of times on replay in the UK, so remember seeing it quite a lot and having to go through the emotional turmoil every time to see if Ash and the gang would escape from the SS Anne at the bottom of the sea. But what do you guys think? What did the Pokemon fandom think of this episode? I have done some digging on the internet and found some comments from real Pokemon fans who watched this episode. It's time for IMDb the very best. It's the best comments from IMDb. And it's like the theme tune, see? It's a clever name. Anyway, here it is. It's IMDb the very best. IMDb, the very best, like no one ever was, do. Akimang says, the fish underwater are just fish. Those poor dudes must feel so basic in a world full of Pokemon. There, see, another comment about real life fish. Someone else noticed it too. Alberto says, Magikarp is the MVP. Mick said, so no one is going to mention the fact that the Bible is canonical in Pokemon? Well, I did earlier in the podcast, Mick. I guess you put this comment quite a few years ago, so you wouldn't have known at the time. I'll let you off. Tobin said, this was the first time in my life that even if you know that somebody is evil or you hate them, we are all humans. I remember being 8 years old, but I understood the situation. We all know that Team Rocket loves Ash and the gang, and they've included a screenshot of Team Rocket and Ash shaking hands. Frederica said, these two are my favourite, and included a picture of Jesse and James. Michael Adams said, "Lol, the instant the ship went under, everyone just assumed that those 5 people were dead. They didn't even try and look for them." That is true. Maybe it cost too much to do a search and rescue operation. I mean, it was a pretty big shipwreck and a ship sank under the sea. It was a pretty slim chance that they were going to survive, but they did. Kyle said, "Main characters appear into a cyclone. To be continued. Alright y'all, time to do the poker rap." Very funny actually. Some of these dramatic episodes did used to end on "to be continued" and then it would be like, "Alright everybody, time to do the poker rap." Fabio DC said, "This was a good episode." However, Elroy said, "I think this is the worst Pokemon episode ever created." Ooh, controversial. And lastly, Lossa said, "Poor Magikarp," with a sad face. Well, that's what you guys thought of this episode. Now the Pika Pals podcast will continue. I am going to be doing a Pokemon spotlight, as well as some Pokemon jokes. But first, we've got to take a pause for the cause. Keep the lights on in the Pika Pals studio with a quick message from our sponsors. Feeling sluggish? Got a case of Pokemon fatigue? Then slither no further. Introducing Arbok's Premium Snake Oil, the cure-all elixir Jesse swears by, and James buys in bulk. Whether you're suffering from battle burnout, evolution envy, or a Charizard-sized Charlie horse, Arbok's got your back. And your tail. And probably your poison glands too. Crafted using a totally certified blend of mysterious herbs, Kanto swamp extracts, and a whisper of Ekin's hiss, this shimmering potion does something, probably, maybe? Need confidence before a gym battle? 2 drops. Need to explain why you traded your Magikarp for a magic bean? 3 drops. Trying to win back the affection of a moody Gyarados? You're gonna need a whole bottle. But for Pika Pals podcast listeners, you can use the promo code SALE at checkout to get 2 bottles for the price of 1. Because this stuff is literally unregulated. So, why wait? Arbok's Snake Oil. It's the ultimate medicine. Now available in original, cherry berry, and hyper beam blast flavours. We're back, and you are listening to the Pika Pals podcast. Let's crack open the Pokedex for Who's That Pokemon? This Pokemon is known for its epic temper and monstrous evolution. This fearsome water flying type is the stuff of sailors' legends and nightmares. So, that just leaves me with one question. Who's that Pokemon? It's Gyarados, and trust me, this one has got some real surprises. Pokemon name, Gyarados. Type, water, flying. National Pokedex number, 130. Evolves from Magikarp at level 20. Gyarados appears to be based on a sea dragon or a sea serpent, and a Chinese dragon. It may also be partially based on a legend about how carp that leaped over the Dragon Gate would become dragons. Several waterfalls and cataracts in China are believed to be in the location of the Dragon's Gate, such as the Longmen Mountains. This is also referenced in Pokemon Snap, as the player needs to get Magikarp into a waterfall in order to evolve it into Gyarados, but only after it leaps over a mountain. It may also be partially based on the Kraken, as both are destructive sea monsters that are infamous for terrorising humans. To add to this, one of Gyarados' original names was considered to be Skull Kraken. Now, Gyarados' flying type may be referenced to the carp-shaped windsock traditionally flown to celebrate Children's Day in Japan. The radio drama The Birth of Mewtwo contains audio footage of Gyarados' discovery by a female researcher, which ends very disturbingly. Stay tuned to the Pika Pals Podcast and I may cover The Birth of Mewtwo's radio drama in a future episode. Gyarados and Magikarp are the only Pokemon that can be obtained without a trade, transfer, or an event in every core series game. Gyarados and Magikarp are two of the Pokemon that can be encountered in the wild at the lowest and highest levels. In Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, Gyarados can be found at levels ranging from 1 all the way up to 100. That would be pretty terrifying if you came across a level 100 Gyarados. I think I'd be terrified if I came across a level 1 Gyarados. But that was this week's Pokemon Spotlight on Gyarados. Okay, it's time for everyone's favourite segment. It's time for Jokemon. You know, they say Magikarp is useless, but if you let... Let me try again. You know, they say Magikarp is useless. Some people say I'm useless at hosting this. Okay, let me try again. You know, they say Magikarp is useless, but if you yell at it enough, it becomes a dragon. That's not evolution, that's parenting. All that for that. Snorlax sleeps for 20 hours a day. The other 4 hours, he's just hitting the snooze and thinking about a lasagna. Why a lasagna? Oh, that's great. If you don't know, which you probably don't, because why would you? As well as Pokemon, I love Garfield and the original Garfield anime. I'm even thinking of doing a Garfield-inspired podcast at some point, so that lasagna reference just made me think of Garfield. Yeah, okay, alright, what else have we got? So I asked a Jigglypuff to sing me to sleep. Woke up 3 days later with the word loser written on my forehead. Pretty good show, though. Geodude is just rock with arms, which is still more emotionally available than most people have ever dated. You know, they say Ash Ketchum wants to catch 'em all. Meanwhile, I can't even catch a cold without crying for 3 days. You know, Alakazam has an IQ of 5,000. I once walked into a glass door at Taco Bell, so we're not the same. You know, Team Rocket keeps blasting off again. At this point, I think they're just trying to escape their student loans. Well, that does it for this week's Pokemon jokes. Some absolute crackers in there this week. That was Jokemon. Well, it's time for Dragonite's mailbag, where I read through your thoughts, questions, and fan theories. And today's letter comes from Emily Moped. Maybe that's pronounced moped. I'm not sure. Must be exotic. Hello, Emily Moped. Emily the Moped? Emily Moped. We'll call you Emily Moped. Hi, Emily Moped, and thanks for your question, which is Magikarp the ultimate underdog glow-up Pokemon? I think he probably is. If you think about it, he has the ultimate glow-up, if that's what you want to call it, of all of the original Pokemon. And if you ever feel useless, just remember, Magikarp became Gyarados. How's that for motivation? Well, it's the end of the show, and you know what that means.
The time has come. It's for the best, I know it. Who could have guessed that you and I, somehow, someway, we'd have to say goodbye.
Somehow, some way, we'd have to say goodbye. Do 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 do. It's the end of the show. Well, thank you very much for hanging out, Pika Pals. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a rating and share the show with your fellow Pokemon trainers. Coming up next, a mysterious island, some very big Pokemon, and more wild adventures. Don't forget, we're raising money for mental health through Mind in Somerset. Thank you to everyone who has kindly donated to my Pika Pals Unite fundraiser so far. You can find more information in the episode description. Help us raise money for mental health and spread friendship beyond the screen. You can catch me across all the socials at Yeetamania, or email at yeetamania@gmail.com. But I've been Jed, this has been the Pika Pals Podcast, and you've been a real Pika Pal.
The show may be over, but the journey continues.